Everybody, it's me, Andrew. Get out into nature and tune in for yourself. Resonate. The Earth's electromagnetic field via 432 Hertz is the universal frequency. Balance out psychologically and emotionally, and further strengthen your brain and your heart's coherence as well. Get a plant-based diet going for yourselves today and nurture yourself right back into life. We are literally herbivores in our nature. Further balance out your physical body's pH level and get with alkalinity. Then you can generate some static electricity, sending me some love telepathically. Set attention to your mind and set intention to communicate. That is all there is to telepathy. You are now tuning in to great days. So today I'm going to go over peacefulness, um, cultivating peace within yourself, and investing in this, and maybe inner gardening, right? So I'm gonna get into this. Um, so let's go with the cultivation of peace. Um, so peacefulness, you can slowly align yourself with the peacefulness within yourself, right? And peace is an absolute vitality. It's a vital sign of health. Why is this? It is a vital sign of health because peace means that you are able to reflect reality and the truth. It's this simple. If you're peaceful within yourself, this means that you know how to live in truth, because truth induces peacefulness. This is simple. The one truth, all true. You know, if you've ever heard of altruism, this is where you treat all things as they are you, with absolute compassion. Altruism, all truth, is literally the root wording in it. So it's the root wording, all true, and altruism, because when you are living in the one truth, you are inevitably going to flow out a compassionate nature, because at the core of your being there is compassion. It is compassion, or it's bliss, or it's absolute unconditional love. That's what God is, or that's not what God is specifically, that's what the experience of the absolute is: unconditionality. I don't have a single condition as to why I should love another person. Love is just flowing from me. Bliss is flowing from me. And I don't have a single condition as to why I should be loving, or as to why I should be blissful or joyful. I just am, for no reason, because it's beyond reasoning altogether. So, when you are able to have the transcendental experience, you're going to come into a state of unconditionality. Because all that is the struggle is the egoic struggle. The ego is the struggle. And that's where the confliction comes. That's where the whole problem arises, in the ego. It's a minute entity. It thrives off of fear, thrives off of argument, thrives off of complaint. It thrives off of the lower vibrational bounded states. But the moment that you transcend the ego, there is no problem and there's no solution, because these are coming in a cyclical nature. There's just dissolution of ego, and there's a peacefulness within that. See, the only thing that's conflicting you out of peace is the ego. If there was no egoic struggle, there is absolute peacefulness, absolute bliss. absolute joy. Look at it this way, look. If you understand that all problems arise from the egoic struggling, then it liberates in a sense. So think about all the things that are conflicting you. Follow the rooting, and eventually you're going to find that the source of that, or the rootings, are going to lead to an egoic struggle. The struggling of the ego is where the conflictions are coming from. So the moment that the ego dies away and there is no ego to struggle, there's no problems. There's only bliss, peacefulness. War, you look at war, there's rhythm to it. There's a peaceful battlefront or a peaceful landscape. 2 weeks later, there's a declaration, or there's a beginning of war. There's absolute chaos between the two parties, and then it's back to a landscape where there's nothing but peace. There's peace, silence, there's absolute destruction, and then it's back once again. There's a rhythm to this. So it's just the ego. Once you're able to transcend the ego, then peace is overflowing and it's abundant. All is abundant. The ego is just making it so, conceptualizing that you're lacking something, but that's just a desire, and any type of desiring is a futile effort, or a struggling, an egoic struggling, a self-projection out of the eternal moment into that which is not happening, right? So find the peace. You can cultivate this within yourself, or you can de-weed. You know, your garden, you have a garden. Inwardly, there's a garden. Each one of your thoughts is a floella, or it's a flowering from something that was seeded within another space. So once you understand that the mind is a garden, and that every thought that you're having is only blossoming because of a certain frequency that you're aligned with, then you can start cultivating the garden how you want it to be. And then you don't have to have certain thoughts. You don't have to have a single thought, right? But this is much harder. You got to be more meditative in order to have not a single thought. But if you use the thoughts, then you can also choose what thoughts are coming up, or you can just learn to enjoy what the garden has to offer if you don't cultivate at it, or if you don't temper it, or if you don't work the garden, right? But you can still just enjoy what it is for what it is, right? That's more like if you're picking up frequency, energy from people, or anything, and it's just blossoming all sorts of different types of dots, and it's conflicting, it's bringing you ill health. You can also just learn how to be at peace with that, right? And just learn to observe it, and eventually you see that it's weather. And this way I mean that I can watch all day, and there's different weather patterns coming around. It gets cloudy, it leaves, it's sunny, it may rain. In another few days, it gets dark, right? It's the exact same thing with the inner state. The inner state is weather, because it's always changing. It could be cloudy, but you observe it, right? So you can cultivate at it. You can you go in it this way. You can observe, but peace most definitely is there at the core. So a lot of it has to do with the conditioning. The conditioning that you have, various different programmings, are blocking you from being able to experience deeply, right? Or experiencing something beyond the normality or the fixation of consciousness, right? Something deeper and more esoteric, or deeper, more mystical, or something deeper and more spiritual, right? An experience completely beyond the physical, which within this experience, most definitely egoic dissolution, not only egoic dissolution, but absolute peace within that whole transcendence. So it's very, very simple. In order to come into that peace, you got to learn how to let things flow as they are, right? Because the whole struggling is coming from the ego. So you got to learn how to nourish the spirit, starve the ego, do whatever you got to do to starve the ego, right? This is why fasts work so well as well. And this is just one method. One method is fasting, because you're starving the ego in itself, or you are not allowing the nourishment of the ego. So there's an easy dissolution taking place, and that's why you're able to come into more transcendental like state whenever you're fasting, right? So learn to dissolve at the ego. Don't nourish the ego. Um, and then make that a routine. Make that a practice to dissolve the ego. Don't allow for the nourishment of it. And maybe in that way you can accelerate the experience of being able to fall into that blissfulness where everything is just absolutely bliss, because there's no ego within that. The whole struggle comes from the ego, because the ego struggles. And it gets off of its own struggling, or it's turned on by its own struggling, because this is what the ego is, right? So you can accept that, and it opens up more possibility, which allows you to dissolve at the ego. So just let it be, and the experience comes. This is how peace comes, and you can cultivate it, or you can cultivate the root to peace, or you can allow it to blossom, right? Very, very simple. It's there already, because peace is found within the source of you, of your being, but it's blocked off, or you're struggling, or you're conflicting yourself from the total dissolution into that peacefulness, right? So that's gonna be it for today's video. I do thank everybody for watching. Once again, peace out, one love, and have a great evening.